Hello everyone. It seems that there's some question about how to program new options into the 3XML module. So I'm going to go through a full example right now of using the Mode Designer and then MPLAB in order to program new modes into a module. This one right here is fresh. It's never even been programmed before, but it doesn't change the order of operations or anything. If it already has programming in it, we can just ignore that fact. So we're going to go and we're going to start with how to use the software, and then after that we'll get into how to use the PickKit programmer along with the 3XML module. One thing I will mention is that this piece does not come standard with a PickKit programmer. This is something I just made using a connector housing and some headers and some pogo pins. These are spring loaded. You can see they compress, and it makes a nice programming pod to press down on the programming pins. You can get these pogo pins at any electronic supplier, and this is just a random connector housing that I had laying around. You can use anything you want, but it just happened to be the right pitch to shove the pins through, and it holds them in a nice position where they don't easily misalign or anything. But the idea is just to be able to get these pogo pins to press down on the programming pads. So moving on, we'll put this back into the programmer here. Also, the PickKit has 6 pins. Someday I'll figure out why. Only 5 are necessary, and that's why you can see there's 1 extra at the end there. You need pin 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pin 6 is not used, and you want the arrow on the PickKit to line up with the square pad. And this is not focusing very well at that length, but this is the square pad, so that lines up with the arrow. Alright, so we'll go on to the software now. The first thing you need to do is download the Mode Designer, which is at www.brightlightmodules.com/3XML. and then what you want to do, I'm going to find my mouse here, is go to the Mode Designer, and you need to download the BLM Mode Designer and the LED Single 1.21. It's the current firmware at the moment. And then if you don't already have it, back one level in the firmware section, there is a copy of MPLAB. This is the actual microchip programming software that we'll use to control the PickKit. So we'll start with the Mode Designer, and you download this to any location on your hard drive is fine, and then you launch the program, and it comes up and it looks like this. And we're going to make a fairly simple setup here. I'm going to make this a momentary contact style mode change, which allows us to use a secondary switch so that the module always has power, and this would be like for a side click switch, something that's not actually in the path of the battery current, but this hooks to a different pin on the 3XML module. And you get some more interesting functions by going that route. You can do things like a long press. We can actually detect whether it's a quick click or a long hold and have different things happen based on that. So I'll set that to go to hidden modes when you do a long press. We're not even going to set any of those up. This is going to be a pretty simple demonstration on how to program. So actually I'm going to turn that off. But we'll go ahead and we'll do no mode memory, which basically allows this to always start at the beginning of your mode choices. And we'll do 3 modes. We'll do a low voltage cutoff of about 9 volts. That's close enough. Alright, we'll do low voltage max brightness of 25, just pretty dim. And then over temp threshold I'm going to set to 45 degrees C. And we'll go to our modes, and the first one we'll do is an off mode, so we'll generate the code for that. Second one, we'll do a ramp to constant brightness of 10. Yeah, that's fine. That'll be pretty dim. And then for the third one, we'll do a ramp to constant brightness of full on, which is 1023. And we'll go back to our defaults and generate our EEPROM. Now this gives you all of the codes that we're going to type into MPLAB. So I'm going to move this over to my other screen here and leave it sitting there for the moment, and then we're going to launch MPLAB. So here's MPLAB, and this is the actual microchip programming tool that interfaces with the PIC kit. So the first thing we want to do is go up to Configure and press Select Device, and this is where we need to tell it what type of a microprocessor is on this board. In this case, we want to just type in PIC 12F1840. That is the microcontroller that's on this board, PIC 12F1840. And then we select OK. And the next thing we need to do is go up to Programmer, select Programmer, and select our PIC Kit 3. Now, depending on your PIC kit, it may give you a message that says it needs to load new firmware into the PIC kit. That's fine, allow it to do that. It'll go through a couple of programming steps to actually upgrade the firmware inside of the PIC kit to work with the PIC 121840. So that's fine. If that happens, just say OK. And then we go back to Programmer and we say Settings. And the thing we want to change is we want to go to the Power option, and we want to tell it to power the target circuit from the PIC kit. What this does is it actually allows the PIC kit to provide power to the module during programming. That way we don't have to have a battery or any type of a power source hooked up to the module in order to program it. And you want to slide this slider to 4.5 volts for this to be successful. So we hit OK, and it's going to tell us a few things about danger, Will Robinson, which is all fine also. Hit OK. That'll go away. Alright, so now the PIC kit is ready to program the module. What we have to do is get the firmware into it. So what we want to do next is say File, Import, and this is where we go to where we just downloaded that hex file off of the website, LED single 1.21.hex, and we double click that, and you get some messages down here about it logging that in, which is perfect. So we've got that loaded now. That's the actual firmware, and now in order to type in those values to get the mode assignments that we want, what we do is we go to View, EEPROM, and here's a screen. Looks like I've got some modes already in there. Stand by 1 second, I'm going to clear that just so you can see this from a fresh start. Okay, sorry about that, I cleared it. I had already had some modes defined from a previous module I was working on, but I want you to see this the way you'd see it when you do this at home. So we'll close that again, and this is how it would look for you. You'd say View, EEPROM, and it would be all FFs, which is basically a clear EEPROM. That means there's nothing loaded yet. And this is where we go and we type all of these values into the top rows of this section. And we do that by clicking on the first one that is not FF. As you can see, the first couple of bytes are FF anyway, so we don't need to change them. So we'll go to 6, which is the first one, and you just type in 01 and press enter. And then this one is still FF, so we'll arrow over to the next one, and then it's 00, DA, 00, B6, 19, 01, 00, 03, and on the next line it's FF, 20, 21, 23. The rest of that line is all FFs. And on the next line it's F0100A, 1, 3, and the rest of them are all FFs. So that's it. We've now defined our modes. This will be different for you based on which modes you choose, but if you happen to use the Mode Designer to make the exact same setup I just did, then it'll be all the same values. So that's all done now. We've typed in our mode assignments, and we can now go down to the module and take our pick kit and press it down onto those pogo pins. This is going to be a little convoluted. I wish I had another hand right at the moment, but and actually I'm not going to be able to do this because I have not enough hands. But the next step, and I'll show you, is you would go up to Programmer and you'd click Program. And I'm going to put this on pause just for a second and do it, and then I'll show you what the response is. Okay, so I just programmed the module by clicking on the Programmer Program option, and MPLAB responds with that. Programming, and then Program Verify Complete. And that means that the module has been programmed now. So, if we go over here and we hook up our leads from a battery or a power supply. Right now I'm running using a 12-volt power supply, which is the equivalent of about 3 lithium ions in series. So we'll hook up the power and the ground, and then you can see nothing happened because I have this one set up to be a momentary contact switch. Sorry about all the movement. I'm trying to get all the leads hooked up here. So this is the mode input, and in order to switch modes, what we have to do is take the mode input and pull it down to ground. This is how you'd hook up your switch between the mode input and ground. And you can see when something didn't work. Oh, helps if you turn on the power supply. Okay, power supply is on. So now when I touch ground, there we go. That's the first mode we programmed, which is a very low setting, and it worked perfectly. So the next mode should be a very bright setting. It's going to totally wash out my camera. There we go. Yep, and you can see now it's very, very bright. And the next mode should be off. And there it goes. So you can see we programmed this module to have 3 modes: off, low, and high, and it works perfectly. There we go. So that's how you use the Mode Designer along with MPLAB in order to program new modes into the module. We could repeat that process with different modes, and it would be exactly the same sequence of events. Just remember, when you do program using the pick kit, disconnect your battery or your power from the module. You can do that either by removing the connections here or by simply taking out the battery and leaving the wires in place. Of course, that's fine too. But that's about it. That's all there is to it. And you can see, what did that take? Maybe 5 minutes? Probably would have taken about 2 minutes if I wasn't trying to make a video while we were doing it. So it's pretty easy to do. Any questions, feel free to ask.